There's no denying that he is a successful businessman. There's no denying that whatsoever. Like what he has done with Sports Direct, what he has done with the Frasers Group as well, is genuinely to be applauded in terms of modern business. He is a self-made man done good. You know, like there's no two ways about it. Cunning, opportunistic, and ruthless is how I would describe him, and I've been consistent on it from the start, and I still will be. When the previous chairman was here, I described it as he is the devil that you dance with if you could have got the previous owner to sell. Now, with the previous owner out of the way and that difficulty out of the way, no thank you. Again, he's often used as like a cutthroat businessman. By that I mean he would cut your throat if he thought it was going to benefit him and his business interests.
For me, man, I just think he's probably the only one that touches us. The only attractive proposition we have is that P word, which is potential. Like, we have potential. Yeah. But, I mean, a derelict building has potential, but when you get in there, it all falls down like that. It's got no potential anymore. Like, it's like, do you know what I mean? I think we are probably a lot worse than what we maybe think, I guess. And I think he's probably the only one that has the cojones, or maybe to actually think, no, I could probably do something here, if you know what I mean.
Okay, 3 football clubs, Newcastle, Rangers and Coventry, all 3 leave more questions than answers, 2 of which had mass fan protest against his involvement. And if you, again, Newcastle is the one that people often refer to, and, you know, if people want to do the digging on Newcastle, it's really easy to do so. There are mountains of information out there, both balanced and well thought out.
Yeah, you sent me a podcast, didn't you, on that as well?
Yeah, there's balanced and well thought out ones with humour. There's 10-minute ones. You can find 40 minutes. You can find 2-hour deep dives. There is so much out there because of Mike Ashley's reign at Newcastle and how fan perception was, to how certain members of the football media in this country perceived him, etc., etc. I'm going to talk about Rangers and why fans branded Mike Ashley and his regime as scum, parasites and rats. And this is important. The reason why I'm focusing on Rangers rather than Newcastle is because Mike Ashley wasn't the main man at Rangers. He was the owner of Newcastle at the time of his involvement with Rangers. Now, apologies to everybody. You are going to have to stay with me through this.
Big Rev says, fasten those seatbelts, buckle up.
I'm so sorry. But it's... So... Very similar to Sheffield Wednesday, the problems at Rangers when Mike Ashley went in ran much deeper than like the present and now. You would argue that Sheffield Wednesday has been a mess since the mid-90s, realistically, off the pitch, and it's had tiny little glimpses of sunlight type of thing that have shone through, and then that's quickly been extinguished. So go back to 1988. Revisionist history, David Murray, who bought Rangers at the time, he bought it for £6 million. He borrowed that money and then he racked up £30 million worth of debts towards Lloyds Bank, which led to a sale in 2011 for £1 to Craig White, who then placed the club into administration, over £9 million paid in unpaid tax bills. All of that sounds very eerily familiar to what's gone on here over the last 26 years. Mike, up to that point, as a cutthroat businessman, had very, very quietly purchased 5.2% of Rangers. He'd acquired it through a holding company called Mash Holdings, and he also acquired the naming rights to Ibrox. Now, I know lots of people have joked about, I don't care if there's a sponsor in front of Hillsborough's name, it's still going to be Hillsborough to me. But again, when you're talking about Newcastle and Rangers, you are talking about two sets of fans who Sheffield Wednesday fans should be able to relate to in terms of seeing themselves in terms of a club of some sort of stature. Number of examples. The one that I'm going to highlight is Rangers Retail Limited, because that, to me, highlights his true nature and character. This effectively turned over, because we've just been talking about the commercial side, James, this effectively turned over the commercial side of the football club and the running of it. So in a press release about the deal at the time, the statement read, "It once again enables the club to control its retail operations, allowing supporters to buy direct from the club," because previously they had been in a deal with JJB, which then collapsed. The deal actually, however, skewed the flow of cash not to the football club, but to Mike Ashley and Sports Direct. Mike described those contracts as the most lucrative of his career. which gives you an indication of just how much money he's about to make. In 2012, Mike then ups his stake to 8.9%, making him the third largest shareholder at Ibrox. The FSA blocked him wanting to purchase more because he was in charge of Newcastle, and they argued that it was a conflict of interest. At the time, Rangers were in the Scottish Championship, not the top division. They were on their way back after all of the administrations and relegations. Yeah. But what he did once that deal was blocked was he couldn't exert any real power on the surface, but what he did is he lent them £2 million to keep the lights on, and then filled the board at Rangers with friends of his, so he had control. He received, as part of the deal, prime land around the ground that had previously been club controlled. So imagine car park outside the Megast, car park at the training ground, other bits and pieces of land that the club will own. He was allowed to do this because of 2 board members. So he ousted 2 other board members and actually put in Easdale and Somers, who did everything they could to keep him or get him further embedded in the club. There's a gentleman who he then brought up from Newcastle, in Derek Lambius, who was a casino owner before his role as CEO at Newcastle United Football Club. He was a London casino owner and then got put in as CEO at Newcastle. Then he got whipped out of there and installed as CEO at Rangers. And also Barry Leach, who was a sports directive executive, and he was appointed as the finance director of the football club. Ashley then decides to give them another £1 million as Rangers supporters decided they want absolutely nothing to do with the way the football club's been run. So season tickets were down, club revenue in turnover was down, much like it has been at Sheffield Wednesday this year. So he decided to pump in another £1 million. Mike then says, well, that's not going to quite work. I'm going to offer £10 million as a loan to the football club. That £10 million is going to be done in 2 £5 million waves of money. I'm going to give you £5 million up front, and then there's a further £5 million which I'm going to hold over here, and the football club can draw on it when it needs. So, also I'll put some good faith in here. I will hand back the naming rights of Ibrox, because supporters were absolutely apoplectic about it, much like Newcastle fans were with St James's Park. In return, he receives 25% of all advertising rights at Ibrox. And remember how many people watch Rangers.
Yeah,
that is prime real estate. That is worth more than £10 million. And he got it for an absolute song. Rangers obviously were still shit, on and off the pitch. They were still a mess. For anybody who is wanting to do a bit more of a deep dive, go and have a look at the Toon 5. 5 reserve team players who were forced to be played by Rangers if fit, and if they weren't played, Rangers had to pay Newcastle, that means Mike Ashley, £2 million if they weren't played when fit.
Matt, I think after this deep dive, I think some people might be Rangers fans, actually.
Yeah, sorry. Mike eventually obviously was ousted. This was fan upheaval, and there was a couple of three wealthy Rangers fans who called the Three Bears, who basically decided we need to get this club out of his hands because it's going like a mess, absolute mess. And when people always say, Michael always just leave clubs quietly. Yeah, no, that's not what he did at Rangers.
Because that's what I'm kind of hoping for, really. When I talk about, turn a profit and then go sellers, as long as it's painless, or not as painful as what this has been. For me, I'm okay with that. Move on and someone else comes in. But if you're saying that it's not like that.
Well, I agree with you, James. If it was just as simple as just sell the football club and I'll just move on, dust my hands of it, doff my cap and say, thank you very much, all, I'll see you later. Yeah, Mike didn't do that. So the deal, remember that commercial deal that I spoke about, Rangers Retail Limited, that gave the club total control of everything to do with its retail sector, and it allowed fans to buy directly from the football club and subsequently the club benefit, much like what happens at Sheffield Wednesday now. When Mike Ashley was ousted from there, he went to High Court to stop the information about that deal ever becoming public and public knowledge. So supporters immediately, and the new board completely smelt a rat about it. Obviously the new board know what was going on, but there's this thing called public records. The end of the financial year, 2013, Rangers' turnover had quadrupled from 1.2 million to 4.8 million. This was because obviously Rangers gear went into Sports Direct stores. And it was en masse, and it was marketed, and it was pushed, and it was everywhere. You'd think with that quadrupling and the fact that the club are now in control of that Rangers would see a massive profit. But Rangers didn't see a massive profit. Rangers only saw 877,000 of that, because every piece of Rangers merchandise that was sold, shirts, tracksuit bottoms, polo shirts, the shit mugs that you were talking about earlier, the shit Fruit of the Loom things that have like Rangers printed on the back, fridge magnets, bought from Sports Direct, amounted to 3.8 million. That 3.8 million was immediately turned over to Sports Direct and Mike Ashley. It wasn't turned over to the football club. And if you would like me to break that down even further, for every £1 that was spent on Rangers gear, 7 pence of it went to the club. The rest of it went into Big Mike's Sports Direct. And if you think that sounds bad, hold on. Because let's deal with the club shop, the Megast, Rangers Megast. After the gagging order ran out, in the 4 years that it had been operating under this deal, for every £10 that was spent in the club shop, your hard-earned money that you want to give to the football club to survive, much like we all did in October and November, 40p of that £10 went to the club. I'll leave you to guess who benefited from it. Let's put it that way, James. But his first name begins with an M and his surname begins with Ashley. And this is where I sit. He's cunning, opportunistic and ruthless. And if 3 fan bases are telling you you don't want him near your football club, guess what? You don't want him near your football club. Because the way in which that he screwed over Newcastle, again, do the digging, the way he screwed over Rangers from a financial perspective, the way he shelved legends at Newcastle, the mess that he's caused for me down the road at Coventry in terms of, you know, inflating a stadium deal and all the rest of it and hamstringing them for basically 2 years while they save to buy their stadium back. If it benefits Mike Ashley, he will do it. It's not about the football club. It's will it benefit him? And my concern is that there is nobody at Sheffield Wednesday in any position of even remote power to stop him. Can you imagine letting this loose for 8 from just that small deal that I've mentioned there? Can you imagine that at 18 months unchecked at every single level of the football club? When we were talking about that get in, get out type of thing, it wouldn't be. You're feeling the effects of this, like Rangers have been up until very recently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will be thankful of that deep dive, Matt, that you've just done, and
sorry,
and things. no, it's good. It's good information for people like myself who just purely looking at it on the surface level and going, oh yeah, it'll be all right. You know, I mean, I'm going to come to some of the comments already because a lot of people have been getting involved in their thoughts on what they think on Mark Ashley. So I'll read them in a second. I think I already know the answer to this question, Matt. So tomorrow it gets announced Mark Ashley is now the owner of Sheffield Wednesday. I mean, I don't know if you want to divulge into what you told me kind of off air before we came into, but I don't think you'll be too enamoured by that, would you?
No, I would. I'll be honest, James, and I think people have kind of got this with coming off social media and all the rest of it over the past couple of weeks. I've been really worn down this year by this process and obviously trying to find and dig out information, etc. We only had 6-7 months of this, really. Like, to be honest, like in terms of a proper protest effort, didn't we? We had we had a summer basically. We all had a summer of protesting. I don't know whether I could do 2 or 3 years of it. I genuinely don't, and I don't know whether I'd want to go and watch the football club. I don't know whether I could bring myself to financially support that regime and prop it up again. I'm just, you know, when you just sit and you just think, again, there is not much that could turn me off supporting Sheffield Wednesday and turning up to the game week in, week out. But I look at the situation that happened at Rangers and I look at what fans did there. And I look at what's happened here over the last 6 or 7 months. If you can see a car crash coming, and you've got evidence to suggest for, you know, multiple different reasons why it's not the right thing,
don't jump in the car.
Correct. Yeah. Basically, don't do it. And I completely agreed with this, with when people were saying, "Oh, if it gets rid of the previous chairman, then yeah, I'll take it." I would have signed up for that. I'll hold my hands up and said I would have signed up for that. I wouldn't have been happy, but I would have signed up for that. Mm-hmm. Now, with a clean and fresh slate, I want him nowhere near my football club. And that's before you get into what he's like as a human being and what he's been charged with and the Fraser's takeover and all of the other business, people have been mentioning 0 hours contracts in sort of like the comments and bits and pieces like that. Again, that's business and that is how he's made his fortune. But when it comes to the football club, I wouldn't want this fan base to have 12 months of respite before it starts up again and it's like this for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's also talk as well that if he does take over, it won't be enough to satisfy all the creditors, which then means we get the 15-point deduction as well, which,
that should tell you straight off the gate. Like,
he's already making it hard for himself, I guess, before he's even started, if that is the case. And I suppose you think, what is the motive? You're not going to get off on a good footing with the fan base if by you coming in, they now want to, because we're then asking him to put money into the club. I know he says, I don't want to give money to the previous owner. I think that's all bullshit, really, to be fair. Like, also, does it really matter who the money's going to? Like, I suppose he's not exactly an ethical man, is he, really? With the way that he operates, it doesn't seem like something that he would... It almost seems like a bit of an excuse, thinking that the fans would get on board with that by going, I don't want to give him any money either. Let's take the 15 points. If that means that idiot can't get any money, and stuff. But I think it would backfire because a lot of people have forgotten about him already. Everyone's whinging and moaning about Henrik Pedersen and me and you included, and talking about the players not trying when 8 weeks ago they weren't even getting paid. So it's mad how things can change quickly. I mean, also for context as well, just with this 15-point deduction, just put it into context in terms of what next season would look like. I didn't look at the results over the weekend, but kind of on Friday when I wrote this little piece and had a look, Plymouth, Blackpool and Peterborough were all on 19 points and were 23rd, 22nd and 21st. Minus 15, so 15 would be 34. 34 points gets you joint second. So 19 points. If you take off the 15, that means it would need to be on 34 points to just be level with the relegation zone. 34 points gets you joint second with Bradford. Cardiff are on 38. So basically, we'd need top 2 form next season at this stage to just be kind of trying to climb out of the relegation zone.
Bobbing along.
the 19th, 20th game of the season. Just to be, we've got to hit the ground running with effectively a brand new squad, because the players that we've got now, it's going to look totally different next season. So I know Leeds got into the top 6 with a 15-point deduction when that happened to them in the Ken Bates era. They actually had a team. Do you know what I mean? That they could actually start the season with. We've got absolutely nothing,
Because that is the thing that you've just mentioned there, James, and just to wheel this back around to Mike Ashley, Newcastle had 2 Premier League squads. It wasn't down to the managers in terms of, and the playing staff as to why the football club was relegated. It was down to the off-field model, and it happened twice. Now, I know people will be going, you're relegated from the Premier League, that don't make a big deal. Newcastle had never been relegated from the Premier League until Mike Ashley stepped foot in there. Mike Ashley also said in 2008, I'll sell the football club. Fans don't want me anymore. I'm selling it. Mike Ashley stayed until, 2021, 2022?
Yeah.
He stopped going to games. He stopped engaging with fans. He was charging extortionate season ticket price. All of this sound familiar? Again, it is the previous... I'm just looking at it, James, and I'm just dealing with the stuff that is in front of me and the information, because I don't know what he'd do at Sheffield Wednesday, and I'm more than happy to be proved wrong on this.
Yeah.
But I know you were going to come on to ask this question. I'll ask it to you, James. With that 15-point deduction and all of those facts that you've just read out there, you need top 2 form. Currently, we've got, what was it we were talking about before? 12 professional players before tomorrow. And we're about to launch into an extra time where we go, he can go. You need effectively a squad of 20 building here.
Yeah.
Do you honestly think that is going to happen? With all of those facts and the information that's there, that's before you dive into Newcastle spent 140 million when they went down to the Championship. Well, they did, but they also sold 230 million pounds worth of players. So again, Mike Ashley came out in profit. So it is. Do you know what I mean?
He's not spent anything.
Got it. You are going to have to spend an awful lot of money.
Yeah, we could probably muster up maybe, I don't know, £10 million worth of player sales, maybe, if we're lucky. Yeah, it's not going to go very far. I know it's League One, and the other thing I kind of caveat what you were saying, about the money going back into his previous, business. He hasn't got a sports direct, to put that into. I guess so. It depends on I don't know if he'd be able to do anything like that. He hid that quite well. I don't know if he's got that mechanism to do that or not. I've not looked deeply into it.
But you're right though, James, and that's because we as a fan base were all so focused on where's the money coming from, not where's the money going. Because I think there are some wonderfully financially literate people at the trust. I bet given some time, now that the pressure's off, those members at the trust sooner or later would uncover where that money from Sheffield Wednesday has gone and actually what the club was used for. Because my own hunch is that actually Sheffield Wednesday was a middle ground where money was filtered in, cleaned, and then shipped out. For what? I don't know. And I'm by no means suggesting that it was for anything illegal or anything like that. But there was money going into the club in droves year on year from the fan base, and actually we never saw any of that money. The chairman himself came out and said, I am losing £9 million a year, which would suggest he was putting an awful lot of money in as well.
Yeah. Well, the fact that he needed to wait for money to come back, just see there that his money's gone out to then come. I have no idea. Yeah, I'm just glad that we're out of that regime.